Hi there, my name is Kaila Green. I am a 22-year-old communication major at UCSB. Today we are going to be looking at different interviews I have done with ketamine patients as well as people who have done ketamine on their own time. In our society, westernized medicine is heavily used and often thought of as the only route of treatment. However, we have learned that that is not the case, and ketamine works great for many people who struggle finding medication that works for them or have treatment-resistant depression. It has worked to help those who have anxiety, eating disorders, PTSD, and many other illnesses. We hope to take a look and see what the ketamine journey is like for each individual, how it has affected their spirituality as well as their mental health. For me personally, I have tried ketamine therapy and found that it is one of the only things that has transformed my life. I'm someone who struggles with depression and anxiety, with slight OCD tendencies, and I have found that not only has it made me more confident, but it has made it so I can pause and reflect and look inwards at myself and go about the day in a more easy manner rather than each day feeling like I'm struggling and fighting against fate and circumstance. I hope that after seeing this, more young people realize that ketamine is an option and you don't have to go the traditional route of therapy and medication. I hope you enjoy these interviews and we will see you at the end. Thank you.
I'm Kylie. I'm 21 years old. I'm from Fairfax, Marin. What else am I supposed to say?
That's good, yeah.
Like,
a little bit. Yeah, that's fine. And what has your background been? If you feel comfortable telling us a little bit about, your mental health and your treatment experience.
Yeah, so I started struggling with mental health issues when I was like 15, so good 6 years ago. And it actually this is kind of interesting, I think, to do with this topic, is my mental health struggles actually started after a really intense psychedelic experience.
Oh, wow.
So, so I had a very strong experience with mushrooms, psychedelic mushrooms, and it pretty much triggered strong dissociation for me, and anxiety and depression and stuff like that, kind of like across the board. And yeah, I tried a lot of treatments. I was put on antidepressants for a little while, other mood stabilizing meds, and I still do use some mood stabilizing medications, but antidepressants didn't work for me at all. Pretty much, yeah, they made me feel much worse, much more like dampened down, and kind of just it wasn't the right path for me. And I did a lot of therapy, and I've tried a lot of different methods of help, and definitely like the ketamine trials have been, or the ketamine tests have been the most effective ones for me, 100%. And I started that when I was, I think, 17. So 17. Yeah, it's been a pretty long time since the first one that I did. And I'm really grateful for that.
Wow. Yeah, very cool. Yeah, I think a lot of young people don't even realize it's an option, which is a big reason why I'm doing this. Because I know for me, like, I wish I would have tried it before trying all the medications that I tried on it.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Me too. And what has the experience been like for you? Like the actual experience of doing ketamine?
The experience is a little bit uncomfortable for me. It's definitely not something that I like enjoy or would do recreationally, which is sort of like interesting to me that people actually do recreationally. But for me, because I have dissociative tendencies, it's really great because I feel like it kind of just gives me a designated time to dissociate and kind of like get it out of my system, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because usually like if I'm not doing the treatments, I just like have moments where I just feel really spacey and just dissociate for pretty much like no reason that is not triggered by anything. But yeah, when I do the treatments, it kind of like just gets that all out of my system, and it feels similar to dissociation, which is not really pleasant for me, but it really like it helps in the long run. Like the next day afterwards, I feel so good. Like I feel just like refreshed, like I just took a really nice shower or something.
Yeah. What would you say you've noticed in like your daily life? Like, has it helped with, for instance, your depression, anxiety, dissociation, creativity, spirituality?
I would say all of the above.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's helped with everything. I would say mainly it's helped with my dissociation.
Yeah.
Because it's helped me sort of see that I can be present without words, if that makes sense, and that I exist without my thoughts. And that is also relates to anxiety and depression as well, because I feel like the narrative in my brain is kind of what has caused some of my issues, is just the overactive like thought process behind everything that I do.
Sure.
And the narrative. And ketamine really showed me that I can exist as a person and a being without any narrative, and that's like totally possible. So then it's helped me integrate that into my normal life and kind of just quiet my mind a lot, and like recognize that I don't know, that I'm much more than my words, and it's also okay for me to sometimes dissociate and not like be 100% like grounded, because honestly ketamine does kind of unground me.
Yeah.
And kind of brings me higher up, but it helps me see that it's like it can be really productive, like going
Yeah.
to higher spaces and understanding that I am more than just my body and more than just where my feet are placed on the earth and everything like that.
Yeah. So do you feel like when you are in your everyday life, not using ketamine, that you're able to kind of tune back into that experience?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I feel like it's kind of like a reference for me to think about, like, oh, well, I'm not feeling great right now, but I know that there's always like another side to it, and there's always a life without my narrative. And yes, definitely it helps me look back and also look forward and
Yeah.
understand that like everything is balance.
Yeah.
It's,
And how has your experience been with telling people that you do ketamine therapy? Are you someone who's open about it, or do you keep it more to yourself?
I'm really open about it. I am, yeah. I have had a lot of people be like, wait, what? Or kind of have a little bit of a judgmental reaction to it. But that doesn't really bother me, to be honest, because I think that there are equally as many people who have a judgmental reaction towards like classical mental health medications as well. Like when I told people I was on antidepressants a couple years ago, I got the same amount of eye rolls of like, oh, medication, that's bad,
Yeah.
And I think it's just a different way of looking at things. And I've had a lot of good positive responses too.
Yeah.
Some of my friends definitely like noticed the difference in me since I've been doing them, and yeah, I don't have a problem with telling people about it, because I think that I want to spread awareness that it is a really great thing.
Yeah, an option.
Yeah, and it doesn't deserve any judgment, because every person is different, and every course of treatment is different.
I think there is still so much stigma around mental health, even though it's gotten better over the years. But, I think doing things like this really can make a difference in just like, talking about personal experience, being open and honest, and showing people that it's not just a party drug, but that it's something that's helping you survive, like truly.
Truly, yes. I mean, I've never seen it really as a party drug. I've never like taken it in that setting before. I've been around people who have, though, and yeah, I mean, no judgment towards that either.
Yeah.
But I definitely think that people need to start seeing a lot of substances that are used as party drugs as possible routes for mental health as well, because I think it's not the only one that is helpful.
Yeah, that's very true. I think a lot of like spiritual experiences can happen with psychedelics.
100%, yeah.
It definitely, I think it's about your intention.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and setting.
Yes, exactly. And you have mentioned that you have tried other psychedelics, mushrooms. How would you say that ketamine kind of compares to those other drugs that you've tried?
Well, I would say I have tried pretty much every psychedelic there
Okay.
that yeah that I've tried
Yeah.
LSD, mushrooms, and DMT. So I would say ketamine is definitely. I think it depends on the dosage and the setting and the intention. Like everything, like is that is what it matters the most. I have had really similar experiences on ketamine as I have on LSD, but not on mushrooms. Mushrooms has always been a very, very different experience for me, much more intense and much more, I don't know what the right word is, but much more kind of like in your face. Like, yeah, they've been really good for me at some points. Like they've helped me with great spiritual experiences before, mushrooms, but they've also, like I said before, definitely caused some negative impacts for me.
Yeah.
But that's my fault, dosage setting, I did
Sure.
that wrong.
And I've seen that, I guess in my own words, I would say that with ketamine, it feels like a very personalized experience
Yeah,
that's very inwards and it's all in your own mind and body. Whereas with other psychedelics, you're just a part of this psychedelic experience,
I
kind of.
100% agree. I think
Yeah.
ketamine brings you inward, and everything else. I kind of say that, like, ketamine changes you, and all the other ones kind of change the outside. Not like
Yeah.
change in like a negative way at all, but yeah, ketamine has never really made me have any strong outward experiences, whereas the others have, and they've been a little bit too intense before.
Yeah, that makes sense. And if you were to give people advice who are thinking about doing ketamine, or if you're thinking back to your younger self, what would you say?
I would say don't be scared of it, because I definitely was scared of it, and that's why I resisted doing it for about 2.5 years when it was presented to me as an option, and
Yeah.
I was like, no, I'm not doing that. That's like horse tranquilizer, like
Yeah.
I would definitely say, like, don't listen to everybody's opinions about it. Um, you know, chemicals are chemicals. Like, people can use different substances in so many different ways, and just because it has a stigma of being a party drug or something for that veterinary practices use, doesn't mean that it's not also an incredibly profound and effective treatment for mental health. And I would say don't be afraid of it, because it might be something that's really helpful, and especially with depression, I would say too. If
Yeah.
that, I think that's the most like, that's the best route to go for me personally, for my depression. Nothing else worked for me, and it was really frustrating when nothing worked, and then I was kind of stopping myself from trying the last option that I was
Yeah.
given to me.
Because you feel helpless and you don't want to keep trying all these things that don't work.
Exactly, yeah, I was so frustrated that nothing was working, and I'd say, just keep your head up and kind of persevere, and maybe you will find the one that really does work for you, because I did.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on today.
My name is Emmy, and I am 22, and I work at a little metaphysical shop downtown where I live, and I also run my own little business online.
Okay, great. And what has, just to jump right into it, what has your background been with mental health and your experience in, traditional westernized medication?
Right. So for like my whole life, I've struggled with depression and anxiety, and the traditional stuff just hasn't, like traditional medicine and therapy just really hasn't worked for me. Um, to the extent that it does for most people.
What brought you, I feel like the jump from regular prescription medication, psychiatry and therapy is a lot different from ketamine. So what kind of helped bring you into that form of therapy?
It was recommended to me by my psychiatrist. We'd kind of run out of options, and she brought it up, and she was like, you know, you should look around to see if it's offered anywhere. And I was hesitant, and then I found it. You know, I was lucky enough to find it through some people, and find a really good place nearby downtown where I live. And that's kind of how I was introduced.
Okay.
Mhm.
And what is your experience with ketamine? What does the actual ketamine experience look like for you? I know it differs from person to person. So what is that experience like?
It's very peaceful. It's very organized. Like the setting is organized. Like I always set an intention for it. Like you put on a blindfold, you listen to like very relaxing, specific music. You have visuals with it. You feel very calm and relaxed. You know, nothing's ever scary. You kind of like have these realizations. You're able to let go of things. And I'd say it's very fast acting healing wise, more fast acting than say like an antidepressant that takes 2 weeks to work up to the therapeutic dose, and then waiting for the therapeutic dose to actually start working.
Yeah. Would you say you would have noticed a difference after the first session, or was
Oh,
it?
absolutely. Yeah.
Very cool. And what would you say is the biggest insights that you've gained from your ketamine experience?
The craziest thing I had was my first session where I I was so shocked because I didn't realize that I didn't know what it felt like to let go of something. And I ended my session and I was like, I know what it feels like to let go of something. And you know, obviously I still struggle. It's not a cure. There's not a cure for mental illness, but it still gives you that relief and that kind of like reminder and retraining of your brain so that you can become almost more powerful and in those areas that you're lacking strength in, and every session kind of getting stronger in those areas. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I can let go of this. And since then I still am getting stronger in that. You know, I still struggle, but I still am getting stronger in that, and kind of like figuring out who I am, and just having very spiritual experiences. I never thought of myself as a spiritual person, but kind of connecting with myself and having more compassion for myself, letting go of a lot of self-hate. Um,
And I've heard people say and read about ketamine therapy in the way that you have this experience, and although it doesn't change you, the way I've heard it put is kind of like it gives you that hope and that reminder that
yeah,
things can feel that way. Things can feel peaceful, relaxed, that sense of
yeah.
like,
It gives you a lot of hope for
yeah.
sure.
Okay. And do you feel like you've been able to hold on to that after the experience, like through your everyday life?
Yes.
Okay, great. And you said that you feel like you gain more spirituality through it. So what
Mhm.
does that look like for you? How has that happened? How has that changed you?
You kind of drop into the ketamine, and you're kind of letting go of the space that you're in. You have the mask on, you're on a journey, and you're you know, I've never felt scared in a session, and that kind of transfers into the real world and gives me like more trust in the universe,
Yeah.
and like that, like, okay, like sometimes stuff sucks, but like in the end it's all going to be okay. Like this is also a journey.
How would you say ketamine has kind of shaped and changed your like everyday life that you noticed? Have you noticed any changes in like your passions or your drive, your anxieties, your social life, those kind of things?
I definitely want to be more social. I have more motivation and more passions. I want to try more things.
Yeah.
I don't care as much about like people's judgment on small things.
Yeah.
Um,
And that
and
kind of ties into the whole like being able to let go, which
yeah,
a lot of people with anxiety and depression struggle with, because it's like one single thought can spiral in your head for days, years, that most people would have forgotten about. So I think that's a huge part of anxiety and depression.
yeah, definitely.
What would you, if you had to give advice to someone who's considering doing ketamine therapy, what would your advice be?
My advice would be to just kind of go into it with an open mind, not to be afraid. And, um, what my therapist, my ketamine therapist tells me is that all journeys end. And that kind of helps me not be afraid to.
Mm-hmm.
I've never felt fear during a session. It's all very, very peaceful. It's a wonderful experience. When you come out of it, you feel wonderful. You actually have so much energy the next day. And I would really recommend setting an intention for your session, like something you're struggling with, set that intention.
That
And
probably helps make it more of a spiritual experience.
yeah, and you get so much more out of it
Yeah.
too, instead of just going into it thinking, all right, let's see what happens. Like,
Yeah.
it gives it more of a purpose. Not that it doesn't have a purpose to begin with, but it makes it more hefty.
Yeah. And what have some of um, your own intentions been before a journey?
Letting go of certain situations, kind of looking into who I am, certain, personal things, um, stuff like that. Yeah. It's usually very personal things, which it should be. It should be personal things or looking into your own pain.
Mhm.
Um,
And have you noticed any times of day that like make a difference, or settings, or are there any things that help kind of make a difference in your journey, similar to setting an intention?
I'd say be somewhere very familiar. Like when I do the sessions at home, I'm always in my room,
Yeah.
in my bed, making sure that I'm very comfortable. Like I set up my bed in a specific way. I have like my essential oils going with like, a smell that is comforting. Um, just making sure I'm very, very comfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In a therapeutic setting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Very cool. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much for coming on and talking with us all today.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I hope you have a good rest of your day.
You as well.
Okay.
Thanks so much.
I'm sorry.
My name is Luke Coleman. I'm 28 years old. I live in Mill Valley, California.
Yeah, and what has your background been? Most of the people we've interviewed have been doing ketamine assisted therapy. However, you have more experience doing ketamine outside of the therapy setting. And so I was going to see if you've ever had any of your own circumstances involving mental health.
So I have a formal diagnosis of ADD. Pertaining to that, I wouldn't say that ketamine had much
Yeah.
merit toward that, but I have had I've experienced depressive episodes, and it's something that started for me a couple years ago. You know,
And what is your experience with ketamine then? When was the first time you tried ketamine?
First time I tried ketamine was up at a place called Benton Hill, California, and it was at a place called Emissions, and it's a music festival, and that was 2012. So I was 20. Assuming that its chemical composition was what we think ketamine is, right, or what people out there think it is. Assuming that it was ketamine, the experience at first felt as if I had been struck with like a 2-hour nap in the course of like 3 or 4 minutes. And it wasn't a nap, you know, there's a level of lucidity that was involved.
Why would you tell other young people that ketamine is something that they should try? How could it help other people who may have not had any experience with psychedelics before?
I encourage it to be tried because it's an introspective journey that allows us to let loose in sometimes difficult ways, right? People, because of our culture, like to call those bad trips. In my personal opinion, difficult trips are the most meaningful. But ketamine has its properties that we know are undeniably beneficial in the way that they work on our mind. And so I think that it's just, you know, the classical setting, you know, if the use is going to be of a quote illicit nature, trusting the source, route of administration. If you can access something that is sublingual oral administration, you're gonna reduce your risk of hitting like the K-hole, right? Which is sort of it's sort of that underlying substrate. It's the second level of Dante's Inferno or whatever you want to, in imagery you want to call it. But the K-hole that's that ephemeral, like, ego death experience or whatever people want to call it. And I think that that's something that is so powerful. It's so powerful because ketamine has these other two properties of where it's very short acting. The experience itself is not very long. Even in oral administration, you're lucid enough. You're basically back to baseline within an hour. And the substantial part of the experience is 15 to 20 minutes. And I mean, it's wild. It's essentially you have to give in, right? And it's the willingness as you're approaching, as you're starting to, as the psychoactive is coming to your mind, it's starting to breach. And there's this sort of tug and pull between, oh, I'm me, but I'm entering this realm, this Valhalla or whatever the hell it is. It's you know, and
you have to let go of your physical body and your physical self and get more connected to your soul.
We're still learning, and it's amazing the things we're finding. But I think that's also, it's, you know, just as that's a good thing, we need to address the inherent consequences that are going to come from that, and that's going to be, yes, ketamine is blown up into the culture. And God, drugs are as old as sex is in comparison to human value, right? So our time with this is one where it's great because we're in this weird pioneering stage, but we're also in a transition stage where it's like, this isn't just an individual journey mentality type of thing with ketamine. This is a phenomenon that is going on around a societal narrative around something like ketamine. And so, you know, as someone who's great, you know, I'm grateful to be chosen for this interview, and because I found a lot of benefit from it. I did.
Well, I hope you have a great day, Luke, and we really appreciate it. And I know the people watching this will get a lot out of what you had to say.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate you considering me for this interview. It's meant a lot to me as well, and I hope my perspective helps just glean some more light and understanding for other people. And and anyone who feels free to want to reach out to me are welcome to.
Okay. Well, thank you. Take care.
Thank you. Okay, bye.
I'm Emre. I'm 21 currently, and I've had like I'm from Maine, and I've had a history with like ketamine usage with an IV with a doctor in Newburyport, Massachusetts. That was like my first experience when I was 15.
Oh, wow.
And I did 6 of their infusions at the time, and then I didn't do it for a few more years. After that, I had a ketamine like nasal spray prescription after a while. Just my therapist at the time thought it would help me. Like I had said I had trouble focusing, or not like focusing, but I had trouble being able to meditate just because of the pure like weight of my thoughts was just way too much. And so he was like, introduced ketamine to me in the sense of like, just kind of like, well, it might calm those thoughts to the point where they're not so overwhelming, or that you might be able to move through them as you usually do in meditation, like kind of like letting thoughts objectively pass, like observe them and then let them go, which ketamine has been super useful for me with that.
And do you feel comfortable like talking about what like brought you to therapy in the first place?
Mm-hmm.
Whatever.
Yeah, so I've been seeing therapists as far as I know since I was like 10 or so. Not super clear memory on my childhood, things like that. And I believe the listed reason for me first trying ketamine was just treatment-resistant depression and anxiety. And later, I think I have never been like, oh, like what's in my diagnosis again? So I'm pretty sure now it's currently for treatment for PTSD, treatment-resistant depression and anxiety.
Okay.
Yeah, and so I spent most of my adolescence just trying to, like I had been on SSRIs in middle school and just like on and off a lot of side effects, just not enjoying it, not feeling like me for like on a regular basis is like really, really, really one of my big things. It just felt like very, it felt a lot more like a detached reality than it did. It made me like SSRIs felt a lot more dissociative than arguably ketamine did, just on a regular basis.
And I've heard that with treatment-resistant depression, just because I actually, the last girl I interviewed had the same diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
And she said that in her experience, it's similar where meds will work for like a tiny bit and then all of a sudden they will just stop working.
Yep. I would go on Zoloft. That was the one that worked the best for me. I would go on Zoloft for like 4 months and get all the way to the top, to like the max of what like doctors can really give you safely. And I was just like, yeah, no, it's like working less and less every day. I like it was just kind of like, and I like kind of felt worse and worse every day.
And what was when you started really young with ketamine?
I did the infusions every 2 weeks for 12 weeks total for 6 sessions.
Okay.
And that was like my first experience, and I was 15 for all of that. I think it was like right after I turned 15. What I think helped me most out of the ketamine treatments was it just kind of like I just really realized how unhappy I was. I like got very in touch with like, oh, like this isn't super normal, like I'm really miserable, I like things aren't great, and I didn't deal with it in a great way. I was 15. What kind of happened after my first ketamine treatment is I just kind of had this like overwhelming like anger towards my parents, because like they were doing their best but like something wasn't working. Like I started to just kind of freak out at them. I had been unhappy for so long and things like that, and
And I was like super struggling with my sexuality at the time too.
You realized that like you came out of your first session upset with your parents.
Yeah, well, and it wasn't even really my first session. It was just after ketamine, I noticed because I didn't even observe it until like years later. I was like, wow, the ketamine actually was like a really big changing point for me. I started like being mad at my parents. Like they started being more overwhelmed, you know. It was just like kind of like a turning point where they really realized how miserable I was and how much they couldn't help. And so then I got sent to treatment, and that was, you know, great, good and bad. All kids are like, man, fuck where I went, but like, I guess it helps. Like, like, you know, but it's just kind of treatment is shit and good for you. So,
How do you feel like your experience has been with the new like lozenge?
I feel a lot safer going into them. I don't really like being alone and feeling like I can't do things. I don't feel like I should be moving when I'm with Phil and Melissa, and that feels safe and like that feels okay. Like that's a side effect that I like need to encounter to get the full experience, but I'm way too afraid to do on my own. So, yeah, so that's been a big thing of Phil and Melissa, and then also the like the applied sense of like I can talk if I want to during it and be like and just ramble something that doesn't make sense, and then they'll be like, hey, do you remember saying this to me? And I'll be like, no. Like one time I asked Melissa if she would whatchamacallit, I was like, would you take my phone and take a picture of me so I know what I look like when I'm happy, or something like that. And it was just like I want to, or like what I want to know, I forget what it was. It was like I want to know what I look like when I'm like truly at peace, when I'm like truly okay. Like I want to, or something. I like said something like that, like super important to me. And she like showed me after, and I just looked super like huddled. I was under like 5 blankets, just like.
But that's
Just
a
super
super
peaceful.
powerful thing. For you
Yeah, and so like it's just little things like that happen every time where it's like, or like I'll just be like, yeah, no, I like imagined myself like completely in this like warm, like pink room, and like my room at home is designed the same way. And Melissa was like, so she was like, you're craving the womb, you know, like, and I was like, yes, that is, I am, yes. Like, you know, like we just like in like I think that was like a conversation we had while I was like pretty deep in one of my ketamine journeys, and it was like super important for me to realize like, wow, my mom like loves me and does her best to take care of me, but I have 5 siblings and she has a lot, and I like needed more room space and more care than I got.
What is your experience with spirituality and ketamine? Have you noticed any change in that, or has it affected any sense of connectedness?
I'm at a point in my depression where it's just like I distinctly experience like happiness, joy, love, and connection. I feel loved. I feel love for other people, and it's objectively not worth it to me. I'm like still suicidal, like really passively. There's a lot of things every time that, like, you know, keep me safe and healthy, but it's I don't know. Ketamine's hasn't really changed that for me. It helps me see things a lot more realistically, but that's my suicidal tendencies and thoughts are the main reason I like don't really engage in spirituality.
Even though they don't understand it or even notice it really happening as it does, they start to realize that they feel like more connected to the like whole universe and like
Definitely.
to the, like society and community.
Yeah, I think
that in itself is spirituality showing, you know?
Absolutely, yeah. And the biggest like factor in how ketamine I think affects like that and me and stuff, and like how I interact with the world, is how my anxiety and depression and all that, so, and my trauma like all kind of cultivate is like my anxiety of being a problem. I constantly am aware of like all the things that could be my responsibility, like might be blamed on me, all the things I could be doing to help other people, all the reasons that I might be doing something wrong, all the, like, you know, like so on and so forth. And ketamine is Yeah, like pretty concretely, the only thing I've ever experienced that allows me to like objectively sift through my thoughts. If I do a ketamine trip later that night, it'll come up in my head like, oh, like, but fuck you for that, Emma. Like, can't believe you did that. And then I'll be like, actually, you didn't do that. What are you talking about? Like, it's one of the only things that like truly like allows me to like re-sift.
Yeah.
And like rationally, really.
And that's a hard thing to do when you get in the anxiety spiral where it's thoughts that are repeating for sometimes even years of like.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So, because you've been doing it for so long, I'm sure you've kind of shared your experiences with people in your life, whether that be your family, friends. And as a young person, do you feel like you've struggled with any judgments from like the outside community or even judgments from yourself by using psychedelics as a mean of therapy?
I get very afraid. Like I've thought about like, you know, like what happens when I don't have a ketamine prescription anymore? Like, am I gonna be okay? Like I've thought that thought has like come to me before, and then I'm like, am I addicted to ketamine? Like if I don't want it, like so like things like that go through my head a lot.
And your family, your mom and your dad have been supportive of you doing ketamine therapy?
Yeah, they were the ones who originally like suggested it when I was in high school, and then the ones who helped me even find a doctor in San Francisco.
Have you noticed like changes in your daily life, like and who you are, just big changes as a person and how you like simple things that you've touched on some?
I have finally found the middle ground of like it's okay for me to say something and like it's every time I say something it's real and true and honest, and like I'm not yelling anymore. Like, it's just gotten to a point where I notice when I'm about to be unreasonable and I'm not anymore.
That's great. Thank you so much for coming on. I was taking time out of your day, so I really appreciate it. And I know I didn't talk a lot, obviously, about me because this is about you, but I related a lot to what you said, and I just really am thankful for you to come on today.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
My name's Jordan. I'm 21 years old. I live in Marin County, California.
Great. And what is your personal background with mental health and your struggles in your medication and your therapy routes?
Yeah, so I've been struggling with anxiety and panic attacks, PTSD and depression. Since I was 15, I've struggled with depression and been on medication for years.
And what would you say is what led you to ketamine therapy? I mean, it's such a different route, I would say, like not your traditional westernized medication or therapy. So what kind of brought you awareness to ketamine and what made you start thinking about doing that?
I had basically tried everything under the sun. And you know, it almost gets to a point where you feel like that's going to be your reality for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
When no doctors can help you, no therapists can help you, and no medication is really working in the way that it should. It was almost, I wouldn't say a last resort, but it pretty much was a last resort, as in everything had been attempted and failed. So
yeah, you had tried everything and this was your last bit of hope.
Exactly, yeah. So I go to San Anselmo Center for Transformational Psychotherapy, and I absolutely love it.
Oh, great. And how long ago did you start on your journey with ketamine?
I started about 6 months ago.
Okay, great.
And a very positive, enlightening journey so far.
Yeah. And what would you say your own personal ketamine experience looks like? I know it differs from people to people and from each session, but what does each session look like for you?
So every session is different. You know, obviously it differs, like you said, from person to person. The main thing that I end up receiving by the time I'm done with every single session is being able to see my life and my situations in a different light. I'm able to kind of see everything in a different perspective and process things way easier. Things that had blocked my mind and restricted me from being able to, you know, believe and think, know, feel secure that I was okay. And then I do a session and I'm completely at peace, and I just feel so much better about situations that have been bringing my life to a halt for like years and years.
And do you have psychedelic experiences every time, or some of the times just more of a calming state?
Yeah, so definitely I've experienced both. I do have a few calming just experiences, sessions that, you know, sometimes I don't go deep into, you know, seeing anything or nothing psychedelic, but it's more kind of a meditative state to where it brings my body in this like calmness.
And what would you say are some of the insights that you've experienced after doing ketamine for 6 months?
Definitely in the first few sessions, I realized that there was a huge difference in the way that my mind was processing my thoughts. I was much more open to believing that I was okay and that I wasn't, you know, going to die. I didn't feel like I needed to go home and, you know, take a hot shower or whatever it may be, put a heating pad on my stomach. Before, it was such a weakness that it was like an automatic trigger. Okay, if I feel this way, I need to go and take care of this. I have to do that. Otherwise, I'm going to feel like I'm not okay and I'm going to die. So it's either the hospital or I go home and I basically burn myself in a hot shower. So for me to just do quite a few sessions and experience the level of openness to understanding that the reality that I am okay, I am alive, I am breathing, I am safe, was just such a life-changing experience. And I think every single session helps me realize more and more that I am strong and I am able to be in control of my thoughts and my feelings, and that I'm not gonna like let anxiety and panic disorder take over anymore.
Yeah.
It's been a huge realization, just knowing that I process things differently every single day.
Yeah, and sometimes you don't even realize like how much anxiety and depression does take over your life until you have some relief from that.
Yeah, and before that, it's, you know, when you're experiencing a mental disorder like this for so many years, it's almost like you forget who you are. You forget the life that you lived.
Yeah.
You know, you don't know who you are. For years, this has been your reality, and you've been stuck in this constant cycle of failure of therapists and psychiatrists and medication and rehab and everything. And so for me to experience psychotherapy and ketamine treatments and all of a sudden be able to realize, oh, this is what living a life feels like again. It's honestly, I'm so grateful for my experience with psychotherapy.
Yeah. Oh. And have you noticed any changes in your connection to spirituality at all, or anything like that, or connectedness to the earth, or, you know?
One thing that ketamine treatments helped me with was realizing that I could no longer stress and hold on to the things that I didn't have control over. I think that was a big step for me, you know, struggling with anxiety and just all your thoughts. You know, it's hard because you cling on to things and certain things that don't serve you. So when you realize that everything happens for a reason, the universe brings you what you need at the time that you need it, and everything happens for a reason. I think if I were saying this 6 months ago, I would laugh at myself and, you know, probably flip myself off.
Yeah.
But it's definitely helped me understand that the universe does bring these things for a reason, and just to try to let go of things.
Yeah, and I feel like that's a very common pattern in pretty much everyone I've spoken to about ketamine. It's like just that feeling of connectedness and like realizing like you can let go helps ease all that fear that's built up for years, and those patterns of like trying to control every little thing around you.
Yeah, and then that also plays back to, you know, the restrictive your mind had on you for so long. You're used to always being a certain way, and then with these sessions, you know, with the calmness that it brings you at peace, and you're able to realize, you know, don't stress over the little things. This isn't gonna matter. Like, there's that saying that's, why put yourself over, like, through it? Why put yourself through something? Why worry when you know it's not gonna happen?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And that's, I think, something that everyone with anxiety struggles with, that normal people don't even understand.
yeah.
And so it's crazy how much a ketamine can alter your thought processing, because it's undoing years of damage that you've done to yourself. Yeah, it's crazy. And have you noticed that being a young woman doing ketamine, and especially for you, you kind of said it was a last resort in some ways. Have you felt like you've noticed any judgment or outside opinions that you've taken in around your own ketamine therapy and talking about it with other people?
Yeah. So I have actually quite a few friends that use ketamine as a street drug here in Marin County, and people just assume very quick that I'm not using it for the proper reasons. And you know, it's almost frustrating in the sense that this is something that has changed my life completely.
Yeah.
And I had no hope at one point, and for ketamine to result in finally a treatment that enables me to live my life. And then friends and some family members that are a little bit more immature have the idea that, oh, you know, if you have any extra, like, I'll buy them from you, or whatever it may be. They don't really appreciate the fact that ketamine actually acts in a sense of saving people's lives. It is more than any other medication that I've gotten from a psychiatrist.
Yeah.
From the hospital, whatever it may be. But, you know, it is a little frustrating for people to not really realize, like, the significant benefits that ketamine has in people's lives that do experience and do struggle with all these mental disorders.
Yeah. I feel like that's very common with young people. For instance, people who have had issues where they need like a marijuana license for their own medical reasons. And then, you know, it got a bad name and it was harder to make more accessible to people because of everyone using it as only a street drug, and not taking into account the serious benefits that it had for these people.
I definitely agree that it acts as, I like that you said, acts as a baseline instead of, you know, a party drug that brings you up or down. It's really, and I know that for some people, once they do take this as a medication, it's kind of hard to see them use it in any other.
Yeah, you don't really understand.
Yeah, that definitely is frustrating.
And how have you noticed your daily life change and grow and expand over the course of using ketamine? Do you feel like your world's gotten bigger, or, you know, you mentioned that you feel like you are more social. So what does that look like for you in your life?
Yeah, so finally, in the last 6 months since I started treatment, if I had to sum it up, I would basically say I'm being able to live my life again. I'm finding out who I am. I'm less depressed, less anxious. Haven't had a panic attack, and maybe I think I've had one since I've started my psychotherapy sessions. Less anxiety. I'm able to control my thoughts way more, like we've discussed.
Yeah.
I no longer have those restrictions, so I'm going out. I'm able to, you know, go to lunch with my friends, which I wasn't able to eat before because of my anxiety. I'm living a normal life, and people are no longer, you know, constantly worried and considerate of, oh, we can't do this because she's like this, or whatever it may be. I'm finally able to get back to a stable, normal life and experience like daily activities that a normal 21-year-old should be experiencing.
Yeah.
So
that's very powerful, like to see the change of because I've experienced it as well, of having your world so small and so confined to the restrictions that your own anxiety and your own brain is putting on you that don't really exist. And then to break those barriers down with ketamine is
Yes.
incredible.
Yes.
And what advice would you tell yourself if you could go back, or to tell another young person who's considering ketamine? What would you have to offer them?
I think for me, especially coming from someone that never used psychedelics or any sort of those type of drugs before in my lifetime to party or try out, I was very hesitant, and I was scared to do my first session. But if I were to look back and tell myself anything, I would definitely have told myself to try it sooner. And definitely, if anyone's considering it, I think that you should conduct research and get a consult and figure out if it's a type of therapy that you would benefit from, because from my personal experience, it has completely changed my life 180 degrees, and everyone in my life is so blessed and so thankful every day that I'm waking up like this person.
Yeah.
And I think that if you don't, like me, if nothing else results in success and you've tried many different variations of therapy, psychotherapy could be the thing that changes your life for the better.
Yeah, that's so great. Thank you so much for coming on today and just being honest and like raw and open. Yeah. Thank you so much for staying and watching the interviews that we have done with the young people group of those who have experimented with ketamine. I hope you have all gained something through these interviews, whether that be a greater understanding of how ketamine can affect mental health and creativity and spirituality, or maybe it has inspired you to research and think about trying ketamine as a tool for yourself in the future. Many of these interviews did move me and did make an impact on my own life. I definitely have had experience with feeling hopeless in mental health and any change to come. However, ketamine has obviously brought so much hope for these young women. And I think it's important that we look at it as an option in the future that is more accessible to young people, especially. If you may have noticed, all of our group except for one was female, young females, ages 20 to, I believe, 25. And thinking about what that means, it's possible that more young people are female that are trying to better their mental health or ask for help, or maybe it's part of the stigma that female are better with talking about emotions, whereas men struggle to open up in that way. But we, hope that this becomes something more accessible and well-known for both males and females in the future. And we really do appreciate all of the people who took the time today to interview with me and share their experience and be so honest and open about very personal things. Thank you, and I hope you all have a great day.